Forgot to mention this in my last video. I'm going to piggyback off that. Two stories I didn't tell. One was Harley parts, another was a Jeep. So the Harley parts is a wife who has a husband that has a bunch of motorcycle stuff in his garage. He passes away. The wife's getting really annoyed with all his motorcycle junk in the garage. She wants to get rid of it, just a bunch of old junk. In this particular case, it's got a positive ending because she contacted a guy that's into motorcycles and like, hey, come over, I got all this stuff, you might want it. It turns out it is Harley Davidson motorcycle parts from like early 1900s, the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s. Turns out it's actually worth a hell of a lot of money. It was roughly like $100,000, $300,000 for the motorcycle parts, rough estimate, that this guy had in his garage because he was buying all this stuff whenever he can find it, and it was appreciating in value because vintage motorcycle parts are only going up in price and they're getting harder and harder to get. So this guy had a fortune. His wife didn't know. She just thought it was old motorcycle junk. She wanted to toss it, throw it in a dumpster, sell it, whatever. She actually makes a pretty good cut off of that. It gets sucked up into somebody who's a dealer is going to sell it, and he makes money, and he puts the parts on the market. So that's kind of like a win. I got another story from Archer Brothers Jeep Parts, who were in Hayward and went out of business years ago, unfortunately. I was a repeat customer, and the story was that there was a guy that had a Jeep. He's been working on it for years, if not decades, through the Archer Brothers and getting parts here and there, and meeting people and doing contacts and going to shows. His Jeep was never, as far as I knew, it wasn't running. It was just always in his garage. He's always something I'm working on. And he ended up passing away, and his nephew got it. So the nephew goes into the store to buy some parts, and these guys are like, well, we know your uncle, and these aren't the right parts for your Jeep. So, like, what's going on here? Like, we know your uncle, we know his Jeep. So he's like, oh, I'm gonna turn it into a rock crawler. And they're like, why are you doing that? This is like a really rare Jeep. And he's like, what? And so it turns out the guy inherited his uncle's Jeep. Before he even talked to anybody, he didn't take a picture of it. He didn't post it anywhere. He didn't ask anybody. He didn't get into the community. He took a blowtorch and just started cutting the body off because he wanted to convert it into a rock crawler. Turns out it was a Ford GPA, the extremely rare amphibious version of the early World War II Jeep, which in that condition is worth a hell of a lot of money. So it's just like he could have sold that Jeep and bought anything he wanted to. He could have sold that Jeep, like the Archer Brothers literally said, he could have sold that Jeep and bought 6 Jeeps. Brand new. He could have bought a rock crawler that's already built. He could have bought anything he wanted to. He could have sold that to a museum. He could have sold it to a collector for a huge amount of money, because these things are going for auction for $100,000 to $1 million depending on condition. So his was in worse shape, so maybe less than $100,000, maybe more than $100,000, maybe $200,000. And this guy took a blowtorch to it and cut it up. He didn't know what he had, and he destroyed it. So it was basically you destroyed something, and you'd only be able to sell it as a parts Jeep rather than being able to sell it at auction for a massive amount of money. So it's important to, rather than to make a move and destroy something or sell something or throw it away if you don't know what it is, to find out what it is, find out what it's worth, and make a contact, call somebody that knows better.